So then you use that renewable electricity in transportation electrification. So we need to redesign our cities so we don't need to drive as much, and then switch to electric cars, buses, and trucks. And I wanted to mention that it's easy to get gasoline out of your own life. We're actually doing a webinar next Tuesday, March 23rd at noon. And we'll teach you how you can get an affordable, easy to use, used or new electric vehicle. Some people who are low to moderate income could even lease an electric vehicle for free. So if you make under $105,000 for a family of 4, and other numbers for different family sizes, you should definitely come to the webinar, learn how to lease an electric vehicle for free. You can sign up at electricdrive805.org and learn about the webinar. Electric vehicles get 100% or 100 miles per gallon equivalent. They have 0 tailpipe emissions. They cut greenhouse gas emissions by 75% and even up to 100% if you have clean electricity. They're also really fun to drive, and you can save about half on the fueling and maintenance. So very easy, accessible electric vehicles. There's about 40 of them available in California, and you should definitely come to the webinar, electricdrive805.org, to sign up for it. Then we need to get fossil fuel out of buildings. So that's why we're talking about the building electrification reach codes here today. And with new construction, it's very economic to build new all-electric homes. And the important thing here is that cities actually have control over this. And we're going to be building tens of thousands of new housing units in the next decade in our region. So as you'll hear today, it's cheaper to build all electric, it's safer for indoor air and fire risk, and it's much greener. The number rule of when you're in a hole, and we are in a climate crisis right now, is that we can't keep digging ourselves deeper. And we can't keep connecting new buildings up to fossil fuels. So we've been working with the Sierra Club on reach codes regionally, and we've had a lot of success. Up in San Luis Obispo, some advocates worked to get the first reach code in our region passed to do all electric buildings. And we've been working in Santa Barbara and Ventura counties with Sierra Club. Ojai passed a reach code for all electric buildings. Santa Barbara is very far down that path. And we've also talked with the counties of Santa Barbara and Ventura, as well as staff and electeds at Goleta, Ventura, Oxnard, and Thousand Oaks. And at some point, state codes will require all electric buildings, but we want to prove that we can do it here and also get our contractors and architects learning and helping with this market transformation. So just wrapping up, I wanted to mention about retrofitting. So obviously, most of the buildings in our region are older buildings, and we need to learn how to retrofit them. Right now, it's not as cost effective as working on new buildings, so that's really the focus. But we're getting a lot of inquiries about people wanting to get natural gas out of their homes. I want to mention that heating your home and water heating is about 90% of your natural gas use, and heat pump technology for both water heaters and replacing your gas furnace are quickly evolving. So as people look at having to replace their furnace or water heaters, you should definitely consider a heat pump that you can power with 100% renewable electricity. The last thing is that mass retrofits are happening right now. I was recently on a webinar earlier this week about the Tri-County Regional Energy Network, or 3C-REN. They're doing a project right now to retrofit 3 complexes of farm worker housing in Santa Maria and Guadalupe. So hundreds of units are getting deep retrofits with solar electricity, LED lighting, air sealing, and energy efficiency measures, and yes, heat pump water heaters. So this is a great equity component with this deep retrofit. The low-income residents will save enormously on their energy bills while being more sustainable. So it's happening now. Hope that you'll join our movement, and I'll pass it on to our next panelist.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael. That was a fantastic tee up. I am going to share my screen now, and then we will jump into it. All right, bear with me for 1 second here. And then let me just start the presenter mode. Right, so I think everyone should be able to see my screen now. Cool. So hello, everyone. My name is Matt Gough. I work for the Sierra Club I'm a senior campaign representative with the Sierra Club based in Oakland, California. But I work on building electrification all across California. And I'm incredibly excited to be on this call this afternoon to share an orientation to building electrification for folks who might be less familiar. So this presentation is titled Building Electrification 101, a primer on gas-free homes. And in this presentation, we're going to specifically be talking about new construction. So there's a lot going on here, and there will be an opportunity for folks to ask questions that we will get to later on today. So if something piques your interest, you can go ahead and type it into the question box at the bottom there. So in this presentation today, there are a couple of key things that we are going to cover. We're going to talk about the impact of gas use in buildings and how that's accelerating the climate crisis and get some of the details there. We'll do a building electrification primer. So what are some of the technologies associated with building electrification and how do they work? What are some of the hazards of gas and the benefits of electrification? And what do the specific policies look like? We'll talk a little bit about statewide progress so far, so what cities across California have done, and then what folks can do locally to help support this effort and bring the benefits of electrification to their communities. So I want to start with this first slide here to illustrate some of the climate concerns. So gas in buildings is exacerbating the climate crisis. Gas in our buildings is responsible for 1/3 of the US's gas consumption and over 10% of our country's greenhouse gas emissions. This means that we cannot stabilize the climate with the continued use of gas. And to Michael's point earlier, we've got to stop the hole from getting deeper. And right now, gas companies connect at least one new house to gas every minute, which means that there are over 500,000 new gas hookups every year nationwide, according to the American Gas Association. So to stop this problem from getting worse, the first thing that we can do is start to electrify new construction. California plays a really important role in this process of electrifying our buildings. We can see here from this chart that 10 states are responsible for more than half of direct building emissions nationally. So California comes in second, right after New York. And when we dig into California's numbers, we see that California's buildings represent about 8% of the US greenhouse gas emissions from buildings. And this breaks down to a roughly 50-50 split between residential buildings and commercial buildings, with slightly more emissions coming from our residential buildings. The good news here is that as we electrify California, we can transform the national market for advanced electric appliances for things like heat pumps, for space heating and water heating, and induction stoves for cooking. We can normalize electrification as a concept, so we're electrifying our buildings, we're electrifying our transportation, we're electrifying our lives to move away from fossil fuels, and we can inspire other states to follow suit. You know, California is the 5th largest economy in the entire world. 1 in 8 people in America live in California, and so the policies that our state adopts has a greater ability to scale and to ripple out across the country and in fact the globe. And the leadership that cities are taking on building electrification play into that statewide leadership that can help us as a planet reach our climate emissions. So I don't want to speak in too grand terms, but I really think that the leadership that cities show plays into solving the climate crisis in a meaningful way. So I want to talk now about the actual technology behind building electrification and some of the benefits that electrifying our buildings can bring. So when we look at this pie chart, we can actually see what building electrification looks like. This pie chart shows the common appliances that use gas in our homes and the amount of gas that they consume. So we can see that space heating and water heating use the bulk of gas in homes at roughly 85% of total gas use. Gas stoves make up a smaller percentage of overall gas use at roughly 7%. But despite this small carbon footprint, there are health concerns associated with gas. The good news is that there are modern all-electric appliances that can replace these gas appliances. So heat pumps for space and water heating, and induction stoves for cooking. So we can see this is the same pie chart, but just translated in Spanish for our audience. So I want to talk next about like what the heck a heat pump actually is. So quick show of hands here. I guess I can't see hands here, but I guess I would imagine that most people on this call already have a heat pump in your home. That heat pump is actually your refrigerator. So heat pumps are great because instead of generating heat, they move it from one place to another. So if you want to warm up your home, a heat pump will take heat from the outside and move it into your home. And if you want to cool down your home, they will move heat from inside your home outside. So heat pumps also function as both heating units and cooling units in one appliance, which is a nice added benefit. And these appliances are also ultra efficient. They are 3 to 5 times more efficient than their gas counterparts, which is an important thing to remember because it's true that here in California, gas is cheaper per unit than electricity, but because heat pumps are ultra efficient, you end up using less energy overall, and so you have cheaper monthly utility bills. The other portion of building electrification is induction cooking. So a lot of people are interested in the cooking implications of building electrification. And so I just want to talk a little bit about how induction works and why we're excited about it. So induction stoves are not the electric coils of the past. They use magnets to actually heat up the pans. And this technology brings a lot of benefits to the kitchen. So these benefits include having it take half as long to boil water compared to a conventional electric stove. You have more precise temperature control. So there are some models that will let you control temperature in 5-degree increments or even 1-degree increments. You have a cooler kitchen because there's no open flame. This is especially important in a restaurant context. And most importantly, there are no harmful chemicals to breathe in. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. These appliances have been around for decades. The technology is mature and they're ready to go into sort of new homes and buildings today. So if somebody asks you what a heat pump is or what an induction stove is now, you might have a better sense of what these appliances actually look like. So then we've got the same slide here, but we've got a translation at the top. And then I'm just going to move on to the next one here. So on this slide, I want to talk a little bit about the hazards of gas and the benefits of electrification. So one of the biggest hazards associated with gas in our buildings relates to public health. There was a study done that showed that kids who grow up in homes with gas stoves are 42% more likely to develop asthma in comparison to kids who grow up in homes without gas stoves. This is because gas stoves release harmful chemicals into our homes when they're turned on. Another study done by the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory found that in a majority of homes with gas stoves, when those gas stoves were on, the indoor air quality was so bad that it would have been illegal if it were found outdoors. And so, you know, we've been living with these appliances in our homes for decades. Like I grew up with gas stoves in my home, and unfortunately I have a gas stove in the apartment that I live in right now. And there are real health concerns and threats associated with these appliances. And so many cities that have adopted building electrification policies are doing it not just because of the greenhouse gas benefits or reductions and the cost benefits, but also as a public health measure to make sure that residents are breathing in healthy air while they're indoors. Another issue with gas is safety. So in the instance of a natural disaster like a fire or an earthquake, gas lines are more likely to catch fire or to explode. And we also know that unfortunately climate change is going to get worse before it gets better. And so as our environment becomes more volatile, we're going to have more natural disasters, and gas infrastructure is particularly vulnerable to these natural disasters. And when gas lines go out, they take much longer to restore than electric power lines. And so when we're thinking about community resilience, gas doesn't play a role in that picture. On the flip side, there are some real benefits to electrification. So on the clean energy front, we can extend the reach of renewable energy into our homes. So as our grid gets greener here in California, we can then use that green energy to power our electric appliances and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions even further. There's also an ability to help with load management. So with a heat pump water heater, for example, you can heat your water during an off-peak time. So like in the middle of the day, the heat pump water heater will store your hot water until the evening when you're ready to take a shower. And so that way you have, a hot, comfortable shower that has water that's been heated up at an off-peak time, which is saving you money. There are also benefits for jobs associated with building electrification. There's a study done by UCLA and UC Berkeley, and they found that in a high building electrification scenario in California, we could add 100,000 new jobs in a 20-year time span to the Californian economy. And a majority of these jobs would be high road jobs paying family sustaining wages. And so we need our decision makers at the state level to really think about what sort of a managed and just transition looks like as we move away from fossil fuels, and electrification can play a role in that process. There's also one of the benefits of lowering energy bills with electrification. So the statewide codes and standards team, which is a team made up of California regulators and utilities, found that building electrification is cheaper in new construction for both single family units and multifamily units. So on single family units, you're saving about $5,000 building all electric. And on a multifamily unit, you're saving about $1,500 per unit. So if you were building, say, a 30-unit building, you would be saving about $45,000 going all electric compared to gas. And this is largely because you don't have to dig up the ground to install the gas pipelines, and you don't have to go through the permitting process for those gas pipelines, which can take time and be costly. And then the other issue is that building electrification can just erode the power of the gas industry. Even though the gas industry only sells 1/3 of their gas in the US to buildings, buildings make up the bulk of the gas industry's revenue. And that means that as we begin to electrify our buildings, it will have an outsized impact on the gas industry's revenue and their ability to undermine climate initiatives, which they have a history of doing and are presently practicing in many places in California and across the country. So now that we have an understanding of the benefits of electrification and what the technologies are, we can talk about what cities can actually do. So there are a number of pathways that cities can pursue, and I'll just talk about a couple of these high-level examples. So a common approach is called a building electrification reach code. There is an all-electric reach code and electric preferred reach code. Most cities these days choose all-electric reach codes because of the cost benefits, because of the benefits to public health, and because of the greenhouse gas emission reduction benefits. And reach codes are characterized by final approval by the California Energy Commission. So a city will pass a reach code, and then it'll be sent to the CEC for final approval. Every city that has passed a reach code has gotten approval from the CEC. And this is because the process for approval is very cut and dry, and cities are sort of easily able to sort of demonstrate that the criteria the CEC has laid out is met. The other pathway is the Berkeley approach, or a gas ban. And a gas ban uses a city's police powers to ban the hookups of natural gas infrastructure on the grounds of health and safety. And so the main difference between a reach code and a gas ban is that a gas ban does not require further approval by the California Energy Commission. It lies within the power of the city and their police powers. And the other benefit is that when a city passes this type of ordinance, it doesn't sunset. So with a reach code, you'd have to reapprove it every 3 years, which is sort of a time-intensive and a staff-intensive process. And with this pathway, once it's been approved by a council, it is the ordinance for the community. Other pathways are climate action plans. Climate action plans are a great way for a city to indicate that they want to move towards a building electrification policy, but they're limited in that they're often non-binding. So it's a good first step towards getting one of these reach codes or gas bans. And this other piece, emission standards for large existing buildings, this is more aimed at electrification of existing buildings, which is a different sort of topic and presentation that we can talk about, but I added it on here because a number of communities across the country are looking at this. And essentially it says that on a yearly basis, a large building has a falling cap for the amount of greenhouse gases that they can emit. And so a combination of incentives to electrify and requirements for emissions will eventually get a building to sort of retrofit so that it's gone from gas to electric. But again, that's for existing buildings, and the bulk of what we're talking about today is for new construction. And then the final thing cities can do is push for state action. So leadership at a local level plays a big role in what decision makers in Sacramento are thinking, which I'll touch on next. So this slide has sort of similar information, but is in Spanish for the Spanish-speaking audience members. So I'll just leave it here for a quick moment so folks can take a look at that. Great. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about progress so far and what folks on this call can do to help further building electrification. So city leadership can play a major role in swaying state policy. So over the last couple of years, 40 cities and 2 counties in California have passed building electrification reach codes. You can see on this map on the right, which is not fully updated, but the bulk of the reach codes that have been passed have occurred in Northern California. This is primarily because PG&E, the utility in Northern California, is friendly towards building electrification, whereas in Southern California, SoCalGas has been very hostile to building electrification. But the tide is changing for the better, I think in large part because of the success and sort of clear benefits demonstrated by building electrification ordinances in Northern California. We're seeing more uptick in Southern California. And so, as was mentioned, Ojai has passed an all-electric building electrification ordinance. Santa Barbara is currently in the process of looking at their own. There are other communities that have also considered these policies. Culver City, South Pasadena, LA County, all of these places have expressed an interest in moving on electrification of new buildings, and we expect to see more of that in 2021. This is important because these policies not only benefit the residents of those communities, they also send a clear signal to decision makers in Sacramento. So the California Energy Commission is one of those decision makers. Every 3 years, they update Title 24, which is essentially California's baseline building code. And because of all of the reach codes that have been passed by cities over the last couple of years, the California Energy Commission is now looking at having a stronger electric requirement or electric incentives in the next iteration of Title 24, which will come out in 2022. So city leadership has helped to shape this decision in Sacramento. And I think that the progress that we continue to make this year will continue to shape what California does, and in fact, what other states across the country do. So local leadership really matters here. So let's go on to the next slide here. Another thing that I really just want to spend some time on is environmental justice. So as we electrify our buildings, there are some key tenets that we need to be thinking about with these policies. So building electrification needs to make sure that it's prioritizing low-income folks and environmental justice communities, places that have historically been left out of economic investment and the clean energy revolution. And so building electrification brings a lot of benefits to people living in buildings, but also to the to jobs in our region. And so we need to make sure that there is a prioritization of folks who have historically been left out. So activists and advocates can do this by doing intentional engagement with community stakeholders who aren't currently involved. So some examples might might be affordable housing groups, environmental justice groups, tenants' rights groups, and others to advocate for policies that will reflect the need of the entire city. And the other thing I just wanted to note is that as we electrify buildings, and especially as we start to think about the electrification of existing buildings, there's some key things that we need to avoid, including displacement due to building electrification, rent increases due to building electrification, and leaving the cost of stranded assets on those who can least afford it. So as more people move from the gas system to the electric system, the cost of maintaining the gas system is going to be spread out amongst a smaller user base. And so that is going to increase sort of the cost of gas. And so as we're thinking about existing buildings, again, sort of difference between new construction and existing buildings, but as we're thinking about existing buildings, we need to make sure that low-income communities and environmental justice communities are prioritized in this work so that those folks are not left on the gas system and stuck paying higher energy rates. This report on the left side is done by an organization called Greenlining. The report's called Equitable Electrification, and it's got a ton of great research and resources in it. I'd encourage folks to take a look at that. And so this is that same slide, just translated for folks. So I'll just give just a couple of seconds to review that. So let's see, so we're getting close to the end of the presentation, but I just wanted to spend a couple of moments and just talk about the gas industry. So the gas industry is well aware of the progress that we've made on building electrification, and they are taking action to slow this progress down. So you can see from this quote here, this quote's a couple of years old, and it's kind of funny. It's by the head of WISPA, which stands for the Western States Petroleum Association. And they said, wow, can you imagine if every local municipality takes up this issue? It'd be death by 1,000 cuts. And so the progress that we've made is scaring them. And they are responding with tactics of misinformation and sort of disingenuous community engagement. So in San Luis Obispo, we saw misleading social media posts and emails. They got a bunch of folks to go to the city council meeting and just like say things that were inaccurate, like the city wanted to take out gas stoves from people's current homes, which isn't true. We've seen some of these tactics happen, in fact, here in Santa Barbara. And so I just wanted to flag that for y'all that, the gas industry is aware of this and they are fighting it. But at the same time, we are continuing to make progress on building electrification because it's just a common sense policy. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions. It's better for people's health and it's more affordable. And so despite the fact that the gas industry will try and mislead people with disingenuous facts, the benefits of electrification, I think, are shining through and are the reason why more and more cities are considering these policies. So let's see. So then I'll start to wrap up by just talking about how folks on this call can get involved in local government and support this issue. So the first thing that y'all can do is just education and lobbying. So building electrification can be a fairly wonky issue if you're not already familiar with it. And our elected representatives and staff folks at the city level are just people too. And so they might not be as familiar with building electrification as you are. And so if, Santa Barbara, I think, is the exception because they're obviously moving through the process and have put a bunch of time and thought into detailing a policy that fits. But for the surrounding communities, I think that it really makes sense to just start to meet with elected officials, to talk to them about these policies, to highlight the benefits that they bring, and encourage elected officials and staff to do more research of their own to understand what sort of building electrification policy would make the most sense in their community. And you having a meeting with a council person can really go a long way in facilitating that process. Another way you can do this is to give comment at public meetings. So you can join, a Zoom meeting for your city and just ask for the council or for the staff folks to look at the issue in more detail. It's a really great way to get involved. Coalition building and outreach is great. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but reaching out to other groups in the community, environmental justice groups, climate justice groups, youth groups, health groups, housing affordability groups, builders and developers, academics, etc. The more people that we have asking for these policies, the louder and more effective our voice is, and the more likely it is that we get a strong electrification ordinance. Media work is good, so writing letters to the editor or getting op-eds in the local paper is a great way to raise the visibility of the issue. And social media is also useful. You know, our decision makers are on Twitter, so get on Twitter, tweet at folks with what you're interested in, and it's a way to ensure that they see what the community is asking for. And then finally, good old-fashioned grassroots advocacy, so sending in petitions and letters to council peoples, recruiting volunteers and activists. This last point for organizing public events, I'll put an asterisk on that. We should not do that until COVID has subsided and everybody's vaccinated, but we need to just demonstrate public support. Yeah, I guess I'll just start to close with there's a growing movement for gas-free homes. So this is just a list of some of the organizations that are involved. There are many more who aren't pictured here. And my last slide is just resources to win. So there's a bunch of good information out there that folks can take advantage of. And if you want to follow up with me after this call, I'd be happy to put you in touch with some of those resources. So thanks so much for your time. I'll pass it back to you now, John.
Thank you, Matt. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot. I want to now move to our panel. We'll have 3 panel members. We'll have Christine James, Dr. Christine James, MD. She is involved with a group called Climate Health Now. Alex Peugeot, who is a local architect in Santa Barbara. And back is Michael Chiapas from CEC. Okay, so first let's open it up to Dr. James. Dr. James, tell us what's going on. Why should health, people who are concerned about health, be concerned about electrification or gas?
Sure, thank you. So, to be honest, we've actually done quite a bit of research over many years of time looking at the relationship between gas stoves and effects on health. And one of the biggest populations that we're concerned about is children. And for them, it's particularly problematic for 3 reasons. They have higher breathing rates and greater levels of physical activity. They have higher lung surface to body weight ratios and smaller bodies, and immature respiratory and immune systems. So for all of these reasons, their exposure just tends to be much more detrimental to their health. You see the effects on children with asthma. As Matthew mentioned, they have a higher risk of developing asthma. In addition to this, they can develop more respiratory infections. Their lung function can go down, and even their susceptibility to allergens is higher. Actually, there was a study from Australia that showed that 12% of the childhood asthma burden was attributable to gas stove pollution exposure. And I think a lot of people actually don't realize that buildings are actually our that source of pollution-related premature deaths. This was a study that came from MIT. And they found that there were 28,000 deaths that could be attributed to buildings themselves. And with the health effects that come from gas pollution, we could actually see a much greater effect on the health burden for people. There was a study out of UCLA that actually showed if you replaced all gas stoves with electric stoves, we could save over 350 lives annually and avoid 900 cases of respiratory illnesses per year. And that also just saves a ton of money when you look at healthcare costs, which is another aspect that, a lot of healthcare professionals also care about. So, I think that there's just a lot of different reasons why we've become more involved with this advocacy effort.
Great. Now I'm going Thank you very much, Dr. James. I'm going to turn it over to Alex Peugeot now. Alex, okay, so you're going to do half of your presentation, about 2.5 minutes in English, and then you're going to switch over to Spanish. And the people who are listening in English will hear an interpretation. Take it away, Alex.
Good afternoon, I'm Alex Peugeot, originally from Argentina, a resident of Santa Barbara since 1974, practicing architecture locally since 1983. I studied architecture right after the oil embargoes of the late 90s that triggered a high level of interest in passive solar systems and energy conservation. That was the beginning of California's long and winding road towards sustainability, starting with Title 24's first requirements for insulation and dual glazing. That time, not so long ago, seems quaint now, as the state embarks towards a zero net energy use just a few years from now, meaning that all the energy that your building generates is all the energy that your building uses. Architects are well aware that up to 40% of greenhouse emissions are related to buildings construction and operations. The California division of the American Institute of Architects designated climate change as its #1 priority in 2019. Locally, the Santa Barbara AIA chapter is deeply involved in energy matters, with a sustainability committee led by Paul Poirier, Dick Carawan, Ed De Vicente, and others, advocating for rich codes and organizing training seminars. And now we'll switch to Spanish, which is my favorite language. La propuesta para...
Alex,
yes.
I think you have to switch to Spanish language interpretation. Like press the button first.
Do I?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I just put Spanish then.
Yeah.
Okay, is that good? Okay. La propuesta, gracias. La propuesta para eliminar el uso de gas en las construcciones ya está en camino en la ciudad de Santa Bárbara, con audiencias en frente al concilio en las próximas semanas. Aunque la compañía de gas continúa su campaña de resistencia, la discusión en el concilio se va a concentrar en el tipo de excepciones a la ordenanza de electrificación. La ventaja económica del programa consiste principalmente en eliminar del servicio de gas completamente, y es por ese motivo que es importante limitar las excepciones a su implementación. Es importante repetir que la ordenanza de electrificación se va a aplicar únicamente a edificaciones nuevas, no a reacondicionamientos, ampliaciones, remodelamientos o cambios de uso. Hoy en día, los códigos de construcción requieren que todo edificio nuevo debe instalar paneles fotovoltaicos, lo cual facilita la eliminación del uso del gas. Las estufas eléctricas, como lo han dicho a otros, han evolucionado muchísimo desde los años 50. Y aunque es un cambio cultural, ya muchas familias las usan. Los sistemas que combinan calefacción y aire acondicionado son muy populares y económicos. Y los nuevos water heaters eléctricos son efectivos y también económicos. El gas natural no es necesario para el barbecue, que funciona perfectamente con garrafas de propane. Lo mismo que las chimeneas, que también funcionan perfectamente con propane. Desde el punto de vista de construcción, en la mayoría de los casos, no hay ninguna necesidad para instalar un servicio de gas. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So now I'll turn to Michael Chiakas from CEC to talk about whatever he wants to talk about.
Maybe you can give me a question because I did
well,
give an overview earlier.
Well, like, tell us what's going on in Santa Barbara with the building electrification and how what CEC is thinking about it and how they, what are the benefits for Santa Barbara?
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to share with everyone that the city of Santa Barbara is at a pretty advanced stage in terms of considering a building electrification reach code. It's been before the entire city council and then back to the city subcommittee, the sustainability subcommittee. And at both committees, there's unanimous support for an natural gas ban. They're just looking at a couple exemptions right now. We were just at the sustainability subcommittee a couple days ago for restaurants and perhaps a couple other exemptions. But in general, I think the city of Santa Barbara is showing great environmental leadership. They realize the importance of moving towards all electric buildings, that we can't continue to be digging ourselves deeper in that climate hole. And I'm confident that the city of Santa Barbara will pass a building electrification reach code. It probably will even have a unanimous vote, I would hope. And it shows a strong signal that Santa Barbara is an environmental leader. I saw that we have some advocates from Ventura County on the line, and we did work with the city of Ojai to pass an all-electric reach code a few months ago. So it's really great to see that leadership. And if there are people in Oxnard or Ventura or Thousand Oaks or some of the other cities in Ventura County, we definitely would like your energy to help talking to elected officials about the importance of bringing forward building electrification reach code in your community.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to switch it over to Q&A. And many people have sent questions into the Q&A box. And Katie Davis, who's the chair of the Santa Barbara Sierra Club, if you could come on live now and maybe ask some of those questions. I'll put on Alelia Parentu, who is the head of the sustainability department at the city of Santa Barbara. So if there are any questions that you can.
Yeah, for any of the panelists, there are a number of questions about for people for existing buildings. Obviously, this code is for new buildings, but there are people that are interested in retrofitting, and for instance, Faith wants to know what the cost of heat pumps are. Jan wants to know, are there residential incentive programs for individual homeowners to retrofit older homes to make it more self-sustaining in electric? And for those who can't retrofit and have gas stoves, are there things we can do to improve our indoor air quality if we can't like replace them? What should we do? So those are some questions, if anyone wants to take those.
I can maybe answer one of the questions about apartment renters and wanting to switch to electric appliances. I was really happy to see the new regional energy network, the 3C REN, and they're starting to fund some programs, especially targeted at multifamily properties to do retrofits. So definitely, if you live in an apartment building and you're curious, especially if you think your property owner might be interested, I know a large portion of the costs could be covered, and they're going to be launching some new programs where they're going to be looking for apartment buildings to help to do these deep energy retrofits. So if this is something you're interested in talking to your apartment complex about, please let me or Sierra Club know, and definitely as these programs launch, we can bring you into the loop and see if maybe you can organize some of your neighbors to ask to be included in these funding programs. I do really like that, these are some deep retrofit investments that will happen, and then that should also lower the energy costs for the tenant. So it's really a great benefit there. And one last question I'll answer was just about the air quality issue. So a lot of people, use gas stoves and are cooking and haven't realized, what that can do to the air quality inside your home. And yes, if you have a hood, it's very important to use that to ventilate your home while you're cooking, or open a window if you don't have a hood to be able to allow some of that fresh air to circulate. So those are some things that you can do right away as we wait for our buildings to get retrofitted to all electric.
Thanks. And I just wanted to add on to what Michael was saying. I'm Alelia Parento with the city of Santa Barbara. Though we're currently addressing new construction because that is the most cost-effective way to build an all-electric building, our plan to address existing buildings is to develop and provide financial incentives, educational resources, and hopefully even testing facilities where you could try out these appliances. So that doesn't exist from our program today, but that is absolutely our approach to existing buildings in the future.
Katie, Mike?
Yeah, so another question. Craig Lewis has a question for you, Matt. If you have something, a pro forma to compare the all electric cost savings that you verbally discussed, I know there are some studies. Maybe you can point him to those resources.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the statewide codes and standards team has put together this report that applies to climate zones across California. And in that report is sort of that cost saving data, or the cost effectiveness data. So I don't have a one pager that I could share right now, but I can link you to that document. And if you want to get into the weeds, that's the place that has all the information, but I don't have a one pager I can share with you today.
Thanks. And so more questions about.
Lelia has to jump off. I'm sorry.
Sorry, anything else you want to add, Alelia, before you have to leave?
No, I think you guys did a great job. Thank you, and covered the intention behind our policy recommendation to council. We will be headed to the ordinance committee in April, and then to full council if recommended by ordinance committee thereafter. So please feel free to contact me if you want to engage in that process.
Lelia. Katie, any other questions?
There are still a lot of questions about really about the details of these appliances, the cost of heat pumps. How does it compare to how does a heat pump water heater compare to an electric on-demand water heater? Also in terms of energy efficiency. And a question about geothermal heat pumps as opposed to other kinds. Do you want to speak?
I can try and take some of those questions. You know, I'll caveat this with I'm not like a heat pump installer, or you know, I haven't done like a deep dive on all the different heat pump brands and offerings, but I think I have some answers to these questions. So on the geothermal, just to start from the rear. So geothermal heat pumps, for folks who are unfamiliar, instead of taking sort of air from the outside, they sort of run a rod down into the ground, and the transaction of either pulling heat into the house or pushing heat out of the house occurs below the surface of the ground. Those types of heat pumps are more common in more extreme climates. So like if you lived in the upper Midwest and it got to be like, you know, -20 degrees outside, it would be harder for a normal air heat pump to pull heat from that air. So by having a geothermal heat pump, it goes into the ground and it's able to pull heat from that location. Those are a lot less common in California because our climate is pretty moderate compared to how extreme it can get in other parts of this country. And so I think it's a good question, but I don't think that we would see a lot of that in Santa Barbara or really anywhere in California. For then that second or another question about the sort of the on-demand electric water heaters versus the heat pump water heaters. Heat pump water heaters are going to be a lot more efficient than those electric on-demand water heaters because, on demand by nature is heating up water in the moment. And so it's having to generate a lot of heat sort of instantly. And the efficiency there is only 100%. It isn't sort of like the 300 to 500% efficiencies that we see with some of these heat pumps. And so those definitely exist, but you're not going to see the same sort of energy saving benefits as you would see with a heat pump water heater. And then was there a first question in that, or were those the only two? Katie, you're muted. I couldn't hear you there.
Sorry, there are just questions about costs, where to shop for them.
Oh yeah.
Also, are there alternatives for large, like commercial applications? Do they have these for large commercial applications as well?
Totally. Yeah, so that's a good question. So with heat pumps, so there are heat pumps that can serve large commercial applications. So if you were building a multifamily housing unit and you had 60 or 100 units or whatever, and you wanted to have heat pumps to service those, there are options. There's an organization called Redwood Energy, and they've actually put out a building electrification housing guide. And so it's pretty great in that it shows all of the different models of heat pumps, both for space heating and for water heating. It shows the different types of electric cooking. And so for the folks who are actually who have maybe homes now and who are thinking about how do I retrofit my home, like I'm interested in bringing clean energy into my house, I would encourage you to just Google Redwood Energy building electrification guide. And it's a really useful PDF that has all of these different appliances and their costs and sort of the sizing requirements. One of the other things I'll just note is, so one of the challenges in retro, again, this is a retrofit conversation now. This is not talking about new construction. So just to draw this line in the sand, but on the retrofit side of things, one of the potential challenges is having the panel capacity. So like, can your home handle sort of increased electric use from bringing in a heat pump? And so in some instances, you would need to upgrade that panel to have heat pump space heating and water heating and induction stove. But the technology is moving forward, and there are actually some heat pumps now that are 120 volts that are coming online. And so I think in the coming months and years, there will be more and more people who won't actually have to upgrade their paneling. They'll just be able to plug in their heat pump into the socket that they already have in their home. And so those are another option for folks who are thinking about bringing these appliances into their own space.
There are also a number of questions about taking this outside of the city of Santa Barbara. Nadia would like to know, is it possible to pass an electrification code at the county level? And Patricia Lewis wants to know, Simi Valley has several new buildings planned. Has there been outreach to the city of Simi Valley on this topic?
Yeah, I'll pass it back to you all as the Santa Barbara folks.
John, do you want to answer those questions?
Oh, I was not anticipating that.
Yeah, well, I can answer while you think about that on Simi Valley. I know on the county level, the Ventura County actually put this in their general plan update, an intention to do a building electrification code. And so they have it scheduled for sometime in the next year or two. They will do it countywide in Ventura County for unincorporated area. So that's Ventura County. Santa Barbara County is working on a climate plan now, so that may be something that they put in there as well as an intention to move towards electrification or to implement an ordinance. So that would be something to ask for right now as they're working on their climate plan action updates. For Simi Valley and other particular cities, this is a great time to reach out and say, look, Santa Barbara is doing this. Ojai has done this. Have you looked at it? I know there are various people reaching out to various city councils. So I would encourage everybody on this call who's in other cities to reach out to your city council and ask them if they're doing this, if they're looking at it. There's some great resources because they can speak to the city of Santa Barbara, who has some great resources, and I will put those into the chat, the Santa Barbara website, so that you can share that with other cities. Anything to add?
I'll just add. Go ahead. I'll just add that California is lucky enough to have a state where it says to its cities, hey, you want to do better than we're doing? Go for it. And that's what they've said to the cities. In other states, 14 states this year are trying to pass preemption codes, laws at the state level that will not allow cities to do anything related to utilities or transportation in order to reduce carbon. I mean, they're slamming the door shut on cities. A lot of cities who've already taken steps, big cities. So what I would say to everybody in this listening area, you have a city, talk to them. Take advantage of what you have. The state of California wants you to go as far as you can. So do it.
And Jan Pal also asked about the city of Goleta. So that's another city you can ask about whether and when they're going to implement a reach code. I encourage you to ask the city council. In terms of incentives, because you asked about that, Goleta will be part of the Community Choice Energy Program that is rolling out in Santa Barbara County later, like in October, and they may have, there may be incentives through that to come. So, you know, there may be some retrofit help through that later.
I would like to add that improving your electric service to a 200 amp panel, you know, it won't break the bank, but it would be nice to have the city give you a little incentive to do that. You know, maybe, I don't know, $500 incentive, that would help.
Kent Bullard says to remind folks that there's a Southern California Edison has a $1,000 electric water heater buy down program. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to mention also that the state of California has some programs that are coming down the pike that will help people with retrofitting. So definitely, you know, CEC and Sierra Club will be talking about those programs when they're available, as well as the local programs offered through the community choice organization. So, you know, I think that there's going to be a lot more structure. We're pretty early in the retrofitting, but there's a lot of interest in it, and we definitely would love the support of community members moving forward to electrify so that contractors and architects get more experience and really build the market. But if you're interested now, you can definitely talk to any HVAC contractor and, you know, ask them about putting in a heat pump. So you can probably get a quote right now for heat pumps or for a water heater. And you know, there'll be some other incentive programs that are coming out.
Well, anything else?
I think we're over time, so.
Okay. Well, I want to thank first of all Katie, who has been really active in this issue here in Santa Barbara, and I want to thank all of our panelists: Dr. Christine James, Alex Peugeot, Michael Chiakas, and Matthew Gough from Sierra Club. I also want to thank Nairo Pacheco Guzman, our translator, who has done an incredible job. It's hard to speak in Spanish as fast as we were speaking in English. And so thank you. And then I want to thank you, the participants. We had 67 participants. Thank you for going over. And I wanted to encourage you. We will be in touch with you. We will send you an email, but I wanted to encourage everybody to get a reach code started in your city, Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. And also the city of Santa Barbara process is moving forward. It's going to the ordinance committee next, and then it will go to the full council. So stay engaged. So that's all. Have a great day. Enjoy the day and use electric appliances. Bye, everyone.